Hey everyone, you are listening to another episode of the All Things Private Practice podcast. I'm your host, Patrick.Casale, joined today by Shawna Murray-Browne. She is an LCSW and the owner of Kindred Wellness and a consultant, trainer, really amazing human being. And we are going to talk about liberatory leadership today. We're going to talk about modeling. We're going to talk about showing up and authenticity and all the things that come with it. So thanks for coming on and just making the time.
Thanks for having me, Patrick.
We could have been recording like while we were talking
Yeah.
before we started this, and lots of good stuff coming out of that. And I wanted to talk, like, you are in the midst of a dissertation and your PhD program and doing all the things and consulting with organizations. And I want to let you take over and tell us a little bit about why this feels like such a big passion for you right now in your life and what's going on. And let's see where this goes.
Yeah, thanks for that lead in. So when I think of liberatory leadership, I really think it's a really solid summation of what I have been learning through life. Primarily in my entrepreneurial experience, but I do think that it is related on all aspects. When I started Kindred Wellness, and I guess it was like 12 years ago. I started it while working as a social worker in child welfare. I was doing sex abuse investigations, and I really, really hated it. And before I was doing that, I was in family preservation. On the side, I was doing grassroots organizing work to like shut down prisons here in the city of Baltimore. And the my work, Kindred Wellness, really came out of me responding to what I saw was a need, what was like absent in the work that I was doing in community. And at that time, there weren't spaces for Black girls and their mothers to be able to sort of remember how to heal themselves, right? And that was the beginning of my business, right? I had been an entrepreneur many times before, braiding hair, making necklaces, you know, babysitting. Okay. Like I was a serial entrepreneur, but this felt different because it was so deeply connected to like my own personal development. And so when I think about like 12, 13 years ago and now, I feel like our businesses and our life, and especially in my work during the time that I was actively an integrative psychotherapist, everything is a mirror, right? Like we're called to model back. It's almost to like communicate with the universe about how developed like, did you learn the lesson from a decade ago now? Like, you have the tools. And so the people that I'm holding space for now are, um, practitioners, mental health providers, healers, change makers, and organizers. We're talking about liberatory praxis all the time when we're talking about how to do therapy from a decolonial way. And then when I'm partnering with organizations and nonprofits, most of the folks that I have the honor of holding space for are at organizations where Black and Brown and Indigenous people are at the helm, and they're making radical change, but they're guiding a community of leaders, and everybody is, can I cuss on here? Okay, like, everybody is, like, fucked up about it. People, it's like it's a shitstorm. Like, it is bringing up a lot of people's trauma, and so, as I was doing my work around, like, what does it mean to create a liberatory power practice? What does it mean to navigate, oppressive systems from a liberatory perspective? What does it mean to run a nonprofit from a liberatory and anti-racist perspective? The thing is, you could talk about the organization, but without talking about the person guiding and walking through the work, that's liberatory leadership. And so it's coming back up for me and my business and all the things I'm seeing reflected back.
That's a really incredible journey, and I love there's so many one, I just love the "Can I curse on here?" So I absolutely
Because I just knew it was about to come out. I was like, ooh. Ooh,
You
this
know,
is authenticity for me,
that's
Patrick.
authenticity, right, and development, right? And that's exactly what we encourage here. And, it's beautiful to see, like, what you mentioned as an entrepreneur is we kind of create what we need. We kind of
Mhm.
create what we see and what we feel passionate about. And being able to see that journey through the last 12 years, starting with like the community mental health and recognizing like there's so much need here, but the resource isn't there, or the information or education isn't here yet. And then creating around what you're seeing in your community and globally too. And you and I talked a couple weeks ago and just about the last couple of years and how fucking hard they've been, especially on the BIPOC community. And just the recognition of like you're creating this thing that there's gonna be a lot of polarization around, there's gonna be a lot of emotion, there's gonna be a lot of trauma, there's gonna be a lot of stuff that comes up, and I'm just curious about, like, your role in that and holding that space and how that impacts you as you guide and lead and show up for the people that you're helping.
Yeah, so my role in that and how okay. So I have to say, for me, it's all before the last 3 years, it's always been my work has always been polarizing, but the extent to which I felt comfortable being my full self and being seen at the same time in my work had changed, right? Um, and so the last 3 years specifically was still feels like a mirror from 2015 when, uprising here in the city of Baltimore around Freddie Gray took place, and so still vastly different because we had the overlay of COVID-19 and the complete shutdown, but still, when I think of the last 3-ish years, I'm thinking about COVID, but I'm mostly thinking about, um, the public, lynching of Black men, right? And so and then it's like that is the anchor, and then what's happening around that. Um, and so the suffocating experience of not knowing what's gonna happen next, the fear around, uh, how long do we have together, like, meaning, like, just in the world, for me, 2015 and 2020 just sort of mirror. Like, I feel like I'm in repeat, but like it's amplified, it's more intense. And so my role centrally has been first returning to myself, returning the presence for myself, and figuring out what my capacity is to hold space for others and how to communicate that. Like, what are boundaries from a liberatory perspective where I'm also contending with my own personal freedom, like, I'm also contending with my own personal healing, like, how do we hold liberatory liberation for everybody and freedom for the self within, like, this really fucked up capitalistic and a whole bunch of other istics problems, like, what is that? And so, I always begin in my reflection and my holding space for other people with, where do I need to first hold space for myself so that, like, what I'm holding up for other folks isn't distorted or can be the clearest it can be, and that I'm transparent. I'm holding it up, they can see themselves, and then I am transparent, and I know that what I'm gonna share back isn't gonna be, trauma spillover, but perhaps reflection. It's gonna be coming out of a space of love and usefulness, but not, "Oh, I need to be seen."
That's really powerful, especially that last statement of the, "Oh, I need to be seen," because I think there's a lot of, performative nature in a lot of leaders too, especially from leaders who look like me, who have the privilege that I have. And over the last couple of years, seeing the rise in necessity to be outspoken, to be anti oppressive, to be showing up from a liberatory leadership perspective. And I think that also comes with conflict, that comes with
Mhm.
Am I able to show up and understand that by being outspoken about values, that means we may turn people off. That may mean we lose people. That may mean that it's not always quote unquote good for our businesses in some perspectives. And I think that is what leadership means, right? Is like doing hard things and being able to absorb both the positive and the negative, understanding that leadership means showing up in the thickest and hardest of times, and also knowing that there may be fallout based upon where
There
you
will
decide.
be
There
fallout.
will be fallout. Yeah, yeah,
There
thank you
will
for
be
that correction. There
fallout.
will be fallout,
Yeah.
and that's what, I think the definition of leadership is when you stand up for what you believe to be right and where your values are aligned and are anchored in.
Yeah. What comes up for me, there are a few things that came up for me as you were sharing. One of them was, you know, that there's fallout because of polarization, and there's fallout because sometimes it's fallout because it's polarization, and folks just aren't interested in being rooted in a liberatory reality, and you have to just be like, all right, here's the boundary, and this isn't it. And there's fallout because in relationship, there's fallout, period, right? I had the honor of holding space for an organization I've been serving for, I think we're on year 4.5, right? I think we're at 4.5 now, maybe 5. And so this is pre-pandemic to now, but we were still just creating like deep connection and a sense of safety with each other. And then the pandemic came in and shook that up. And while I was holding space for this group of leaders, this executive team, I was guiding them through a process they hadn't been through before. My role with them had changed over time. At first, I was working with just the advocates and the service providers, the grassroots folk, and then it shifted to me offering support for the executive team. And they had not ever had conversations about collective agreements and how they were going to be together with each other and what authenticity looks like. And when I was holding space for this conversation, one of the leaders, she was a white woman, and she said, "I mean, I don't know if I should just think that like we just don't trust each other. Like, do we have trust issues?" And she was saying it like, "Oh, shit! Like we've been working together all this time, and we don't trust each other." And I was just like, "Absolutely, y'all been working together this whole time and y'all don't trust each other because y'all are in relationship, but haven't invested in cultivating trust and relationship, cultivating authenticity or defining what that is and creating safety with each other. And many folks don't, right? And so when we're thinking about like that fallout that happens in our businesses, sometimes it's in our businesses, sometimes it's with the people we're serving. It's also fallout because we have to put more time in for the emotions that come up when we're triggered. It's like that's just it, right? And so like that came up for me is right. Like we have to also recognize that not all fallout is because people aren't about the work. Some fallout is because we're still learning how to love each other, and the love usually isn't allowed in business, right? Or you're not allowed really, it's not acceptable. It's it's against the status quo to actually truly give a fuck about the people you're working with. And there's not a model for how to do that when you're also trying to survive a capitalist system, make profit so that you can live a thriving life, right? Those things are not usually holding hands, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, the ability to truly care about each other's well-being and safety and mental health and just ability to get needs met versus making money off of the work that someone's doing. I think that's a really challenging line to walk for a lot of people, even with the best of intentions.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like you said, that love has to be created and fostered, and that trust and safety has to be created and fostered. Then that means having difficult conversations sometimes.
And
And I
being
think
wrong.
and being wrong.
Like, piloting some shit and that shit failing, right? Like, all of this
Absolutely.
is anything liberatory, anything liberatory. Yes, folks have been doing it for centuries. Yes, we can call on the multiplicity of, like, radical traditions of doing things, right? And it's always going to be different. And so we're gonna everything is a pilot, right? When we're trying to co-create liberatory praxis and way of doing things. And so we're gonna fuck up. We're gonna hurt each other. We're gonna learn more about, our money trauma. We're gonna learn more about how we feel safe or unsafe, depending on how much money is generated or not, right? Like all or how much exchange is happening, right? Um, yeah, so that's it's all up in our business, Patrick, every day.
Would you think do you think, and I feel like this could be like a really obvious answer for me to even ask, but the reason so many people shy away from doing this type of work is because the inevitable fuck up that's going to be happening and the inevitable fallout that happens. So it's like if I just avoid this, if we don't have these conversations, then we never have to go down that road of the fuck up or the failure or the fallout or the conflict.
Absolutely. Like, actually, let me read it that part. Don't edit this out. Abso-fucking-lutely, right? Like, try deciding, "Hey, I'm gonna try to honor humanity and reconsider, um, adequate reciprocity in a system that wasn't created for that." Even though our notion of business was inherently oppressive, right? And so it is so much easier to do what everyone else has done to gain quote unquote success if success is, amassing a certain amount of coins. All right. Like, it's so much easier to do what everyone else is doing. It's the tried and true way. And you have, because it's almost okay, so in trauma work, right? One of the underlying things that is a really important practice is to let the folks we're holding space for know what we're doing before we do it. We know what to expect, right? When you work for a company that is not particularly liberatory, maybe they got some social justice, statements in there, but they're not actually looking to embody anything decolonial. You know what to expect, right? This is what you're getting paid. This is the way it's going to be. We're not doing all that emotion shit. Keep that at home. That's private. You know what I'm saying? You know what professionalism is, right? So the status quo in that regard, while it is harmful to us and has historically been, it is also safer because it's what we've become accustomed to and used to. And when we decide not only for ourselves as the leaders making the sort of ultimate decision, but the leaders we're working with, right, or the folks that are walking into their definition of leadership, um, we're we're also saying, "Hey, so I'm sort of building this plane. I'm repairing it as we're going up. We're gonna change the shape of the wings. We hope we don't crash while we right? Like, you're literally changing the fabric of how we do business, how we engage, how we guide, and it is like, no one has mastered it, and so it is absolutely scary as shit.
Yeah, and I firmly believe in that imperfect action of build the plane as you fly it and figuring it out as you go, but I understand what you're saying of saying you have to kind of go against the status quo if you're going to be willing to move into more of a liberatory leadership, anti-oppressive lens, and that you are gonna have to really find a kind of buck the system in that regard of like, this is how we run a business, this is how we treat employees, this is how we kind of create culture that we have. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, the inability to try to think differently or outside the box or see things from a different lens. And I I can see the challenges in that too. And so you kind of moved into this anti-oppressive, decolonialism based therapy practice consulting.
Yeah,
Words are hard today.
they was there.
During the last couple of years, and I'm just curious about, like, obviously, I totally see the need for that. I think it's imperative, but what prompts that?
Okay.
We're seeing all this, all this murder on TV of young black men by the
Mm,
police. We have the fucking Donald Trump presidency going on at the same time. There's a lot of shit going on, and then
yeah.
it sounds like that's where you were like, "This is I need to show up. This is the need that I'm seeing. I need for people to really get this right."
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, okay, so remember when I said, like, I might have been doing the work, but I wasn't okay with being seen broadly doing the work. And so I would say that my initial experiences with receiving therapy were mostly atrocious. And not like, well, maybe once. I was gonna say not like blatant racism, but that's not true. Like I was right. But there's a couple of sort of, I'll call them watershed moments for me, that was preparing me, like, or sort of showing me that this was my work. And so the first time I will say was probably when I was in undergrad. Shout out to all the Terps, all right? Is when I was in undergrad, and I was in like a psychology was a psych in a criminal I was studying criminal justice, criminology, criminal justice, and family science. And I was in a class, and we were reviewing for an exam, and there were a series of lectures I intentionally missed. And those were the lectures about drug policy. And that was because it was triggering for me because my mother struggles and has struggled with addiction. And the way that folks would talk about Black folks struggling with addiction was triggering for me and made me want to punch people in the face. So I intentionally missed those classes. And so we were reviewing for an exam at the end of the semester, and the professor, there was no way for me to know when we were gonna review that section of the course, right, for this exam. And he was reviewing it, and I was like, "I'm very sure this would meet the criteria for PTSD." I, basically had a flashback of my mother sort of doing drugs, and I left the class and then did not show up for my exam. Bad idea, okay? Ba Bad idea. And so I went to the cultural center, on campus, at the University of Maryland, called the Nimburu Cultural Center, and I spoke to one of the, leaders there, because I was in there crying, like, "Oh my goodness, I'm about not only am I triggered, I'm about to fail this class," right? And I don't do fail, right? Because perfectionism 5,000. And so what he did is he sent me to the walk-in time for therapy, for students to gain therapy. It was like the people of color sort of like therapy walk-in. I'm not gonna tell y'all how many years ago that was. Just know I'm a millennial, okay? So that's it. That's all y'all need to know. Don't need to know whether or not I'm older or the younger one. I'm a millennial. So they have POC, like walk in, or maybe it was Black folk walk, whatever. I went, I spoke to this therapist, I think it was a psychologist, Black man, Harvard trained. Why do I know that? Because his like degree and license was big as day over his desk, and I guess he was trying to help me when he was like, "Okay, so tell me what's going on." And I was like, "Can you tell me who you are? Hi, what's your favorite color? Where you from? Like, can we build like, I'm not about to tell you all my business. Like, Imma need you to, like, connect with me." And he was like, "That's not what we're doing here, right? Like, I'm here to help you. I'm the expert. You're gonna tell me your problems, and I'm gonna tell you how to fix it." And I was like, we not about to do this shit." And so, like, I left. Thankfully, I was able to sit for my exam still after just communicating authentically with my professor. But that was, like, the first, right, experience where I was like, "This is trash," right? And this was undergrad, so I was not nobody's therapist. I was still loud and about, problematic things, but I was like, "This is trash." The second time would probably have been after I Um, 2 times. You know, one was after my brother was murdered while incarcerated, and I could not find a therapist. I was a social worker at the time, I was and therapist. I couldn't find a therapist that didn't know me because I was training others, and the way that my colleagues were responding to me was almost like they were afraid to engage with me because, like, the huge public, very, like, horrible sort of traumatic experience, and nobody really knew how to engage with me at that time. So that, and then the last would be after I had my daughter. She had spent some time in the hospital. We wasn't sure she was gonna make it. She had bacterial meningitis. And like I knew I needed therapy because I was like, if she don't make it, we ain't leaving. Like I was like, I'm gonna hurt myself. Like I'm not leaving out here without my baby. And again, I had to ask the social worker, "Hey, I'm a social worker. I need a skilled therapist, please, because this is not okay." And I was didn't have health insurance at the time, went to a therapist through a nonprofit that was offering free therapy, got myself a nice white racist woman who was like, "Oh, you weren't thinking of like hurting your baby? You're not. You're fine." I'm like, "No, I'm a professional. I'm mental health. I'm telling you, not fine." And she was just so dismissive that I was like, "This is trash." And so those particular experiences from the time that I was in undergrad, which was over a decade, oh my God, right? That's when I started my initial awareness. A couple years after that, I graduated, went, got my MSW, thought it was super racist, was like, this is problematic, altered my clinical praxis. And that's when I started studying privately, right? So this would be about 10 years ago, 10, 12. Okay, now y'all gonna know. I was okay. 12 years ago is when I started my business. I started my private practice 10 years ago, right? And so 10 years ago is when I started to apply the liberatory praxis. I was doing my personal work. I was studying liberatory ideologies. I was doing my healing work myself, and that's how I altered my clinical work. But it wasn't until had reflecting on my time in college, having the time after my brother was killed and my colleagues not knowing how to engage with me, and subsequently having this time when I really needed support, and not being able to get access to it, that I was like, "Oh, I have to do it." Like, after I get myself together, after I go and utilize my own frameworks for my own healing practice, I have got to increase the population of folks that understand that this liberatory work is needed. So, I was doing that teaching and that work. My daughter is 5. So I was doing, and my brother was killed 7, 8 years ago. So I've been teaching liberatory praxis for about 7 years. The pandemic just put that on like hyperdrive. I was doing the trainings, but only for like 20 people in Baltimore, small consultation. Folks did not want to pay me. Okay. They wanted to do one workshop and be done. It was used to piss me off. I was like, nobody wants to do this. I was just like, what the fuck? We can't go deep in 2 hours, y'all. We can't. And so like that's what I was dealing with like 7, 8 years ago, with folks being like, okay, well just I know you had this series of 15 hours. We got $500. Can you come in for 2 hours? And I would just be like, fine, right? And so the pandemic, unfortunately, fortunately, made me have to put it on, made me have to put the teachings in a way where people could access it virtually. And that's how the turn up happened. Folks learned of um, the um, the way that George Floyd's life was taken, and subsequently amplified my work. So I'd been doing it for a while. It's always been necessary, and there's been others that have been doing it, but I've been doing this particular work for a while, but it only was amplified 3 years ago. I know that was a long story, Patrick.
It was, I mean, it's captivating because I mean, I just appreciate you being willing to share it. And just to put it out there, and I'm sure you have before, but I mean, I haven't heard it, so I appreciate your willingness to do that, and
Thanks
there's
for
so
asking.
much to unpack there.
Yeah,
Uh, and it's just I'm just thinking about those experiences and how those experiences are not rare, right? Like
yeah,
the experiences
yeah,
that you had along the way in seeking out your own support and therapeutic journey. And um, I'm thinking about like my wife who has a hard time finding people who look like her. And even when that's the case, like still being able to trust that you're gonna build rapport and connection. You're gonna like not just jump right into the clinical diagnosis part and like the ability to practice in a way where we're taking culture into consideration and it has to come to the forefront and not just saying like we're going to use evidence-based practices, we're going to do these things, and I'm not going to share anything about myself and like all the fucking bullshit that we see. But
yes,
like I mean it's just incredible to say that that journey has taken you to where it's taken you to say I know that we need this.
yeah,
So even in my time of grief and suffering and struggle, I'm gonna show up and do this fucking work. And the other thing that stands out for me is yeah, I just wanna take your 2-hour course or like, do this thing and be done with it. And I almost equate that to like just checking the box, right? Like of just
yep,
like and I talked to you about this when you and I met a couple weeks ago of just like putting out there that like we're anti-racist practice and we support the Black Lives Matter movement and like that's kind of it. And here's this recording and like do it at your own pace and let's go on our way. And it's almost the equivalency too in grad school of taking that one cultural diversity class and
mhm,
saying like, I'm
get that
coach,
credit.
fully competent now.
Yeah,
So this like this work is lifelong, right? Like this
it
can't
is.
stop and this can't just simply be a 3-hour requirement
Yeah,
for you to be able to then say, this is how I practice, this is how I show up in the world.
yeah. The through point for that is that is shifted, right? Like we went from, okay, we'll talk about anti-racist social work for 2 hours, or I'll take for like it's like Jeopardy, like give me uh liberatory practices for 100 please, right? Essentially. And we went from there to binging. That's how I would describe it. I would describe particularly the our world, right, of mental health, wellness, um, self-care, all of coaching, all of that. We binged. That's what I observed and watched, and that's what I was responding to and being asked for, opportunities for binging. And I was saying, let's go slower. While also my body was saying, I don't want to talk about this shit no more. I'm gonna get it out. And like you take it or leave it, right? So there's always this multiplicity of things happening for us as leaders when we're sharing something really deep with ourselves. Because I was also deeply triggered by the entire existence of the pandemic. Like literally, it just brought up all the things from the murder of my brother. Every time a black man is killed, I'm like not okay, or I have to decide to disassociate, right? And so the we watched folks go from checking the box to I'm ready now and to okay, now what now? Tell me what to do now. Okay, I need it now. I need you to show me how to do it. And now I feel like we passed the big hump, of and not everybody people did wanna binge, and not everyone was I think most people were genuine in it, like, it felt urgent, and many people transformed in their understanding because it was binging, but it was also deep focus, right? Like, I binge Harlem on Amazon, alright? Like, I watched all the seasons, I understand, I'm getting it. And now it's sort of like, all right, I'm tired. I don't really, we're back to the checkbox, right? And it's a different kind of checkbox. It's like, we're responding to a lack of funding, a lack of interest in how to create capacity for longevity. And the way that I'm responding to that is to say, "Hey, I wanna go deep and not wide. I'm tired of being used in this particular way. It's gonna hurt me. It's gonna hurt me, right? And my business to make that decision because it's not what's hot and popping in market right now, right? Doing a deep 16-hour training and then committing for the rest of the year to do deep work with your team isn't the top of anyone's line item in the midst of folks thinking that the pandemic no longer exists, whilst also dancing with a recession, right? And so the what it's done for me is shown me why it's so important for me to consistently be with myself so that I am not reading others' interest in taking whatever I have to offer as a dehumanizing process, right? I have to remember, oh, I see everyone in their trauma response, our collective trauma, right? I see us all sort of reacting in this way. How can I, as a leader, not take it personally? That means I have to be personal. I have to get personal with myself. What is coming up for me? How is this? Um, what is this showing me I still need to commune with?
Usually when I'm on these, I have like rapid fire thoughts, but right now I'm just taking in what you're saying. And I think it sounds like when you're getting really intentional and real with yourself about what do you need out of this, that there's some sacrificing there and acknowledging like I acknowledge that for me, I need to have people who are willing to show up for the year and really do the deep work. And with the acknowledgement of, but that means I'm sacrificing over here financially and all these other things that I could do in shorter spurts. But I think that's exactly coming full circle to your point of wanting to talk about liberatory leadership and saying this is in alignment with my value system and
Yeah.
this is really where this lands for me, and this is what feels really, really important at this point in my life with what I've done, with what I've given, with how I've shown up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The challenge of um holding those realities, seeing and understanding other people's needs and interests, and being aware of folks, I'm gonna say ignorance around I mean, decolonizing and liberation and freedom went from words that really weren't. I remember a funder once telling me that he'd like me to take liberation out of the name of my framework so that he could get funding for it. It was a white man of a large sort of foundation. And I didn't tell him anything. I didn't say yes or no. I pretended I didn't hear him and went on about my business. And so it went from that, right? This being like a scary term that, I remember another person saying, "Well, it makes me think of like the Black Panther Party and they were violent." And I was like, "Nope, not accurate," right? And so that it went from that to whole organizations saying decolonization, liberation, freedom, um, or conflating it, watering it down, sometimes in an effort to gain greater understanding, but oftentimes it gets sort of sucked up by the system of regurgitation. And so then folks don't understand what it really means, right? And so it makes sense that, I have to change and when you have a team of folks working with you or you're seeking to build a team, right? Like I was in the midst of like really trying to build a team. And then I'm like, man, I need more money. Like I can't like I can't just be I have to how am I going to hold the space of needing and wanting to grow for the work to be at the volume this deserves. And the people want is the quick, you know what I'm saying? Like the quick money, conversations. And so, yeah, it is really, it's a growth point for me again. I've never been in a situation where I thought I wanted a whole team of folks. I had gotten to a point where I was like, I'm good being solo over here, I'm cool. And then I was like, nah, that's not good. Like, that's not sustainable. Like, I need to grow. And so once I got to the point, I was like, Imma grow. Imma grow this thing. Kindred Wellness about to be out here. It's like at the same time, society was like, can we go back to that checkbox? You know? And so it's super important, right? To be like water. Like, and to really like, again, not personalize it but be personal, right? To go deeper with myself, and to be candid, with the folks that I might be able to be in partnership with, right? And the folks that I have the honor of having on my team, right? Around this is what's happening, y'all. We making some decisions. Usually, make decisions for coinagery, and for translation, coinagery is money. All right. You usually you make decisions for what's gonna be profitable, but what is a liberation focused, healing, entrepreneurial journey? It can't be rooted in capitalism, but it also means you can't exist in a capitalistic society if you don't have it.
And that's the polarizing piece.
Yes.
That's the catch 22 here is standing firm in value versus can't pay rent and making
Yeah.
certain decisions or
Yeah.
staff. And
Yeah.
it's so fucking hard. But I think at the end of the day, it feels so much more rewarding and fulfilling to be consistent
Yeah.
and to show up the way that you want to show up.
Yeah.
And, I wrestle with that a lot in my group practice because one of our values is people over profit. So I know I'm making significantly less money, but I also know we need to pay the bills and keep the lights on and
Period.
pay all the things that we do to make sure clients are coming in the door. But whew, it's even that is challenging. So just staying true to your values and just showing up as authentically as possible, I think is
As possible.
that's what makes this all worth it, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It makes the job a hell of a lot more fulfilling. It makes the relationships a hell of a lot more authentic and connected. And I just think that you're doing absolutely incredible work. And this has really been one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had. And I mean that. You're just everything you've got going on is really amazing.
Thanks, Patrick. It's been a shit show, but I'm glad it looks nice.
Wow. That's the authentic piece, though, is that it has been a shit show,
Yeah,
and yet you're showing up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, the thing about, the the essence of, like, liberatory leadership is showing up. It's staying there when you really wanna run away. I was reading a quote from, mm, I don't wanna mess up his name, so I'm gonna pull it up so that I can say it correctly. Um, Put it in my stories, one moment. Um, the quote is from, Bio Akomolafe, and I'm not gonna read the entire quote, but the parts of it that really resonated with me this morning was, if healing is not the goal, where else to go, right? This is the takeoff point of fugitive practice. It is not a question that desires answer. It is an unanswerable question. And the fugitive question, and the fugitive practice, the question is only, how do I get out of here? Not where am I going? And so it makes me think about, right, that decision to stay and to be with your difficult emotions, to choose to be authentic, to cry with your colleagues when, as a boss, you're not supposed to be crying out this bitch. You're supposed to keep that shit together, right? To, like you're not supposed to be, doing too much of the kiki, too much of the connection, the depth when money is involved. When I read that post and put it on my stories this morning, um, it made me think, okay, so the fugitive practice or the status quo is how can I get out of here? I just need this shit to be over. What do everybody else be doing? Or what are folks be saying? Get somebody else to do it, right? Like, don't want to be here. That's the fugitive practice. The fugitive practice maintains the status quo. It is not liberatory, right? Liberatory leadership, liberatory work, if you've been guided by me and my works, liberation focused healing doesn't always feel good. It's just like when you're in therapy and you start to actually get to the crux of what the fuck is going on and you're like, yikes, this does not feel good. But if you can go through it, you be okay with maybe, maybe I don't know the answer. You get okay with, oh, okay, if you slow down and you allow yourself to be there, then maybe the answer is there isn't one. You know what I mean? Maybe part of the liberatory praxis, part of the liberatory leadership is being okay with not knowing and figuring it out together and being okay with everybody sort of contributing to that and life contributing to that and recognizing that like time ain't even real, it's not real, but we have to pay attention to it because of those confines. And so it's being fluid. It is absolutely acknowledging all of those things. So I feel like what I have been trying to do is resist the urge to take the exit, right? The exit being, I'm gonna go watch that HGTV, figure out where now y'all weren't here, y'all weren't listening before we was talking about what I do when I'm doing nothing. And what I do is watch House Hunters International so I can figure out where my escape route is, right? Like I want to go live somewhere else and live this fantasy life. And I still am gonna go live somewhere else, but the intention, right? Resisting the fugitive practice is to say, I'm not going to get out of here and completely abandon the work because it's too hard. I can go and figure out more about myself in this new space, right? I can go and let myself be seen in this new space. And maybe the answer is in relationship and love.
Love it. I I hope all of this really resonates for everyone listening and that it makes you start to think a bit differently if it hasn't. And I really just appreciate you sharing your story and all of this really wonderful wisdom and advice and guidance around a topic that I think is really, really crucial. So just want to thank you for coming on and making the time and just showing up as authentically as you could.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me. Thanks for sitting in the unknown with me. Yes, I appreciate you.
Likewise, and I'm looking forward to working together as well. Um, Tell the audience where they can find more of Kindred Wellness and what you're doing and how they can access your information.
Awesome. So my own miniature commercial. Got you. You can find me at Shawna Murray-Browne with an E.com. Not the color, y'all. Add the E. That's the first thing. You can follow me on Instagram at Healer Sister, not sister, sister, Sista. You follow me? All right. You can follow me. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Shawna Murray-Browne with an E, y'all. And I also have a Patreon that you can learn more about if you go to shawnamurraybrown.com and scroll all the way down. It'll send you to the links. Yeah, I be on there. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I lay down, but generally speaking, you can find me in the stories on Instagram and you can always contact me through my website.
That was a wonderful pitch, by the way. So thank you for that. It sounds like you've had to say that quite a few times.
You
So
listen, and people love to either cut one off. They'd be like, Shawna Brown, nope. Shawna Brownie, nope. Murray Brown, y'all, with an E. All right. Soon to be doctor. I'm gonna put that in there because in a couple months, y'all gonna hear. I'm gonna add some other sauce to it. It's gonna
I
be
was gonna
doctor.
introduce you that way. So,
You
trying to
were, I
figure
know.
out.
And I would have let you do it. I would have let you do it, Patrick, because it's about to be true. Couple months in 2023.
Congratulations on that. That's a huge, huge accomplishment. I could not do the
Exactly.
dissertation piece. I could barely do the research class in fucking graduate school. So more power to you. But that is a really amazing, amazing accomplishment. And thanks again for coming on. All of that information will be in the show notes for everyone, so you have easy access to it. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to the All Things Private Practice podcast. New episodes on all major platforms. Like, download, subscribe, and share. Doubt yourself, do it anyway. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Shawna.